We've decided to move forward without you. That's what my father said, in the break room, while pouring coffee, not in a meeting, not behind closed doors. Just that, flat and final, while the microwave beeped behind him. I stood, there in my work blazer, still smelling faintly of hospital disinfectant. I'd been gone 6 weeks, not for vacation, for Mom. She'd had a stroke, lost most of her speech. Her right hand barely moved. I bathed her, fed her, read to her. I paused my entire life, our life, so she could hold on to hers. And this is how I returned. He didn't look up when he said it, just stirred his coffee like we were discussing the weather. I asked, slowly, "Who's we?" That's when Claire appeared, my younger sister. In heels too high for logistics, holding a latte and wearing my access badge. She smiled with that polished PR smile she always used when she was lying. "We were just talking about easing you back in. No pressure, of course. Easing me back. I built the scheduling matrix they still use. Trained every manager in our 4 regional warehouses. Ran ops through 2 recessions and a supply chain collapse. And now I was a guest?" I walked down the hallway without a word. Past the offices I helped design. Past faces that used to smile when I walked by. Then I saw it. My office. North windows. Blinds drawn, new plaque on the wall, Claire Hale, acting director, not interim, not covering for Rachel, just acting, like the curtain had gone up. And I wasn't part of the show anymore. I didn't open the office door. I just stood there staring at the plaque like it might peel off on its own. It didn't. It gleamed. Behind the glass, Claire sat at my desk, one leg crossed over the other, pointing something out on a screen to Jackson, my former direct report. He laughed at whatever she said, my chair, my screen, my team. I backed away before they saw me. The hallway lights buzzed faintly overhead, and for the first time since I joined Hale and Finch, I felt like a visitor. No, less than that. Like a name. Someone forgot to delete from an old group email. I tried to log in at one of the shared terminals. Access denied. I typed again, slower. Same result. My email? Disabled. My name? Not listed in the staff directory. Claire's profile, however, was front and center on the internal portal. Headshot professional, caption warm. Thrilled to step in and support the Hale legacy during Rachel's leave. Support? She'd gutted half my warehouse team and repackaged it as efficiency. There was a link to her welcome announcement. The comment section buzzed with congratulations from investors, partners, board members. Not a single mention of me, just one line near the bottom. "We're grateful for Rachel's years of service." Years of service, like I was some departing employee from payroll, like I'd turned in a resignation letter and walked away. I checked the calendar. Quarterly board meeting, next Thursday. No invite in my inbox, of course. Claire was listed as presenter. Dad as host. I looked around the hallway once more. The framed company values, the ones I helped write, were still mounted above the drinking fountain. Integrity, initiative, respect. I almost laughed. I walked outside into the wind. My car was parked in the same spot I'd used for a decade. But even the way I opened the door, hesitant, quiet, made me feel like I was stealing something that no longer belonged to me. They didn't fire me. They didn't say I was done. They just erased me. Clean, professional, permanent. The next morning, I sat at my kitchen table with an old mug of coffee and a legal pad. No laptop, no noise, just memory. I started writing names, people I trusted, people who'd know what changed while I was gone. My hand hesitated at one name. Angela, HR director. We weren't close, but she owed me. Years ago, I covered for her when she was in chemo. I texted her, "Need to see the last 2 board updates," quietly. She replied in 2 minutes. "Check your Dropbox, discreetly. Thentoir." Folder was labeled Legacy Reports. I opened the most recent PDF, Amended Bylaws, April. 2 weeks after I took leave. Section 5.2 jumped out. In the event of an unplanned absence exceeding 30 consecutive business days, Voting privileges and board status will be considered lapsed unless reconfirmed in writing. I hadn't confirmed anything because no one had asked me to. My hands were cold on the keyboard. Then I saw it. Attached to the vote summary was a consent form with 3 signatures. Dad, Claire, Mom. Mom? I clicked. Her signature was clean. Flowing cursive. Margaret Hale. But Mom hadn't signed her name like that in years. After the stroke, she could barely hold a pen. And before that, she'd switched to printing. All caps, block letters, easier. On her hands. I felt a dull pulse in the back of my neck. I opened our home security app. Mom's nurse, Carmen, had helped set it up. Footage looped in 24-hour segments. I found the day the document had been signed, time-stamped 2:14 p.m. At 2 SARS, Mom was in bed, sleeping. At 2:14, Claire walked in with a folder. She didn't hand it to Mom. She just looked at her, closed the folder, and walked out. I sat back, breath frozen. The signature had been forged, likely by Claire, and Dad had let it happen, or worse, helped. I called Nancy, our housekeeper. Asked if anyone ever asked Mom to sign papers in the last month. She paused. No, honey, Miss Margaret can't even hold her lipstick. I hung up, the page still open, 3 signatures, a legal maneuver, wrapped in family, dressed as policy. They didn't just write me out, they used my mother's silence to seal it. I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I opened a new browser tab, typed in a name I hadn't used in years. Margot Bell. Dad used to say I cared too much. He meant it as a warning, not a compliment. Business needs clarity, Rachel, not feelings, he'd say while clicking through spreadsheets I'd spent nights building. I never fit the mold. I'd walk the floor. Every Friday, talking to line managers, warehouse crew, even the janitorial team. I remembered birthdays, sent flowers when someone's dad passed, caught payroll errors and fixed them before they became lawsuits. Claire, on the other hand, never walked the floor. She walked the investor calls. She wore heels that clicked too loudly on the marble, quoted efficiency ratios like scripture, smiled through layoffs and called it momentum. Dad loved that. She didn't challenge his authority, didn't ask what cutting 2 warehouse shifts would do to delivery times in Missouri. She didn't pause to ask, should we? Only can we. The board responded to that. So did the markets. More Claire rose, the more I was treated like a relic. I saw it even before Mom's stroke. One night, 6 months ago, I stayed late to review shipping allocations for Q1. I brought Dad a sandwich, like I used to when I was a kid tagging along. After school, he barely looked up from his laptop. You're still working on those zone shift optimizations? He asked, almost amused. Claire thinks we should just outsource zones 3 and 4. Cut the headache. I blinked. That would lay off 43 people, he shrugged. 43 problems solved. That was the moment. The flicker. The quiet confirmation that somewhere along the way, the girl who stayed late, who saved the company from a freight audit nightmare in 2019, who once took a call from a shipping vendor on her wedding day, had become inconvenient, too soft. Too involved, too human. And then Mom got sick, and I stepped away, and they saw their window. I was never supposed to return, because I didn't belong in the company they were trying to build anymore. I didn't yell, didn't storm into board offices or draft angry emails or threaten legal action. I just opened an old folder tucked at the back of my filing cabinet. Labeled in my handwriting, Margot Bell, Acquisition Terms, 2016. The last time I saw Margot, she wore a navy coat and refused Dad's handshake. He'd tried to buy out her shares during the Hale and Finch expansion. She declined, quietly but firmly. She never attended company functions, never called, but her name still appeared on every quarterly report, owning 42% of the parent holding group. Technically, she outranked Dad. He just made sure no one remembered that I found her assistant's number at the bottom of an archived email string. Typed a message. This is Rachel Hale. I'd like a brief call with Ms. Bell regarding board irregularities and equity misconduct. I believe she'll want to hear this directly. She called within the hour. Her voice was sharp, dry, controlled. "I've been waiting for this," she said. I told her everything. The forged consent form, the amendment clause, the signature that wasn't Mom's. When I finished, she paused for a long moment, then said, "I never liked what your father turned this company into. But you're thorough. You remember things." Another pause. Then, "I'll be in town next Thursday. I want to attend the quarterly meeting, unannounced." I blinked. "You're attending?" "I own the table," she said. "They just forgot I built it." After the call, I got to work. I pulled every board memo from the last year, cross-referenced dates, votes, language shifts, noted every policy that had been changed for continuity, compiled every document with Mom's name and signature since her stroke, only 3, all digital, none matching. Then I called Carmen, Mom's nurse, and asked if she'd be willing to give a written statement verifying Mom's physical condition on the date the form was signed. She didn't hesitate. "Absolutely." I printed everything, labeled tabs, cross-referenced timestamps with security footage, stapled Nancy's statement to the front. No headlines, no rumors, just evidence. Let Claire rehearse her speech. Let Dad sit at the head of the table and talk about legacy. Because I wasn't coming back to ask for my seat. I was coming back to prove it never stopped being mine. The boardroom smelled like polished wood and fresh coffee. Claire stood at the head of the table, blazer crisp, slide remote in hand. She was glowing, the way people do when they believe the room belongs to them. "Let's begin with impact," she said, echoing the same phrase I used for 8 years. Word for word, the screen behind her lit up. Q3 operational reform, a new era of efficiency. She smiled. Numbers followed. Warehouse consolidation, headcount reduction, supplier renegotiations, every bullet point, stripped of story, of names, of the people behind the numbers, packaged neatly as wins. The board nodded. Dad leaned back, arms folded. Satisfied, Claire flicked to the next slide. Projected net margin increase, 12.7%. She waited for the applause. And got it. It was a strong performance, confident, clean, and completely hollow. She spoke about momentum, modernization, and market alignment. But not once did she mention how those strategies were drafted 2 years ago. By me. Not once. Did she mention the people laid off? Or the shipping lead who'd worked 16-hour shifts to pilot that system? Or the supplier we'd kept during COVID even when it cost us more, because they were family-run, and they kept our shelves stocked when no one else could? None of that made the slides. To them, it was just margin. To her, it was a stage. She clicked to the closing slide. Questions? The room shifted. Some board members straightened. Dad opened his mouth to speak. That's when the door opened. Margot Bell entered first, her heels silent on the carpet, and behind her, calm, composed, was me. "Apologies for the delay," I said as I stepped through the door. Parking was brutal. Every chair shifted. The applause stopped like someone had cut the power. Claire lowered her clicker. Her smile faltered, just slightly, but enough. Dad straightened, his brow tight. "Rachel, this is a closed board meeting." His voice was sharp but not loud. Controlled panic. I didn't answer him. I didn't need to. Because Margot Bell stepped forward, calm as ever, and said, "Actually, Richard, it's not. As majority shareholder of the parent group, I requested Rachel's presence." The room stilled. Eyes flicked between us. Between the woman who had just finished her triumphant quarterly report and the woman she thought was still nursing a fading name. I walked toward the table, heels silent on the carpet, and placed a binder on the center. Tabs labeled, statements signed, footage clipped, Carmen's affidavit, Nancy's notes, the forged signature, blown up and highlighted. "Before we move forward," I said evenly, "I'd like the board to review these. You'll find copies under each of your seats." A rustle of paper, a mutter from someone in legal. Claire didn't sit down, but she didn't speak either. Her hand hovered near her laptop like she might disappear if she closed it. "These documents," I continued, "demonstrate an unlawful change to board eligibility, including elder fraud. My mother's signature was falsified during my leave. The vote should never have been valid. I paused. Let the silence land. But you knew that, didn't you, Claire? She opened her mouth. Nothing came out. Margot folded her hands. We'll hold a formal review, she said to the board, then turned to me. In the meantime, Rachel, the floor is yours. I didn't sit. I didn't need to. The room already knew who was in charge. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't dramatize. I simply opened the binder and turned to the first tab. This, I said, is the amended bylaw submitted on April 14th, revoking voting rights for any board member absent more than 30 consecutive business days. Several heads nodded. They remembered approving it. Now, I continued, flipping to the next page, this is the consent form attached to that vote. You'll see 3 signatures: Richard Hale, Claire Hale, Margaret Hale, A. Few eyes flicked to my father. One brow raised near the end of the table. I held up the blow-up version of Mom's signature. Except my mother hasn't signed her name like this in 3 years, and she hasn't written cursive since her stroke, which occurred 12 days before this document was allegedly signed. Silence. I clicked a remote of my own, a small one, connected to the company projector. Security footage played. Claire walking into Mom's room with a folder. Not handing it to her, not speaking, just standing, then leaving. Then came Carmen's affidavit, then Nancy's sworn statement, each one confirming Margaret Hale hadn't signed anything, couldn't have, no one interrupted. The use of her name, without legal capacity or consent, I said, is considered elder fraud, under state and federal law. Someone at the far end of the table coughed. Another shifted uncomfortably. I turned to Claire. You submitted this document to justify restructuring the board, to remove me, knowing full well it was invalid. Her voice, when it came, was small. You left, you were gone. We had to stabilize the company. I tilted my head. And forging a stroke victim's signature was the solution? She didn't answer. I turned back to the board. I'm not here to ask for sympathy, or even for a position. I'm here because this company's foundation is not profit, it's trust. And if we can forge signatures when people are vulnerable, then what else are we willing to fake? Margot leaned forward, hands clasped. The board will convene privately to assess all presented evidence. In the meantime, Claire Hale's directorship is under review. Dad didn't speak. He just stared down at the table. And Claire, for the first time since I'd walked in, sat down slowly. The click of her chair, settling back, echoed louder than anything she'd said all day. I didn't stay for the vote. There was nothing more to prove. Margot stood beside me as I gathered my binder. You could take it all back, she said quietly. The position, the power, they'd hand it to you now. I looked around the room one last time. Same wood paneling, same chairs, but nothing felt familiar anymore. I didn't come here for a title, I said. I came for the truth, she nodded. And you gave it to them. As I stepped out of the boardroom, the hallway felt quieter than usual. No rushed footsteps. No glass doors opening, just the steady rhythm of my heels, deliberate, unhurried. Outside, the fall air was crisp. The flag out front barely moved. I paused by the main entrance, the one with the etched company name on glass. The name I used to take pride in. Dad's voice echoed in my head from years ago. Legacy is built in silence. He was right, but so was I. It's also built on truth. A staff member passed by on his way in, one of the warehouse supervisors I'd once trained. He stopped, looked at me like he wasn't sure if he should say something, then simply nodded. I nodded back. When I got in my car, I didn't cry. Didn't feel triumphant. Just still. The radio buzzed on, some soft jazz station I didn't remember setting. As I pulled away, I glanced in the rearview mirror. Claire stood in the lobby, arms folded, staring at the door I'd just walked through. The glass reflected her back at her, small, blurred, incomplete. And me? I didn't need a seat at their table. Because some victories don't come with applause. They come with quiet exits and doors that don't need slamming to close. For good.